All right, welcome to the second part of the lecture on stem cells. So another type of embryonic stem cells, one that is a little bit different, it doesn't get talked about a ton, is umbilical cord blood stem cells. So the umbilical cord is the cord, the tube that connects the placenta, the source of oxygen and nutrients, um, from uh, the cord that connects the placenta to the developing embryo. So when a baby is born, um, there is blood in that cord that came from the placenta, and that blood has stem cells that really can't be found anywhere else. Unlike typical embryonic stem cells, this cannot create any type of specialized cell. It can really only be used to create blood cells, but because it's found in the umbilical cord at birth, the baby can be born perfectly healthy, and then the blood from the umbilical cord can be used to treat another patient. The catch is that the patient and the donor really have to be a close match. The odds of getting a close match from two unrelated people are pretty small. So if you are in need of umbilical cord blood stem cells, you either need to sort through a whole bunch of different samples or hope that someone closely related to you, um, maybe like the baby is a sibling of yours, or um, it's a sibling of yours who's having a baby, a very close family relationship, and even then, you may not be a close enough match to use that cord blood. So this is much less controversial, but also doesn't have nearly the same potential to treat as many different people and as many different kinds of issues as embryonic stem cells. One of the big um, hopes is that umbilical cord blood, or I should say one of the big uses, is that it can be used to treat leukemia. And then adults, uh, really by adults, it's just anyone who wasn't recently born, um, also have stem cells in their body, in their bone marrow, or in our brain tissue, in our nose, the upper nasal cavity, our skin, some other organs, but they are only, again, multipotent. The ones in your brain can only become brain tissue. The ones in your bone marrow can only become blood. The ones in your skin can only become skin. And again, the donor and the patient have to be a close match. I can't use anyone's bone marrow to treat anyone else. I need two people who are close matches. And then the last major type of stem cells are called induced pluripotent cells. So this is sort of exactly what it sounds like, where we take adult cells and we transform them to become pluripotent, where we can take cells from someone's skin and basically train them to become nerve tissue or heart tissue. This process, even for stem cell treatments, is very, very difficult and very, very expensive. And what's worse is that these induced pluripotent stem cells are basically disease and patient specific, meaning I can't even take stem cells from me and donate them to a child, a sibling, or a parent. I'm the only one who can use them. And if I induce some cells to become, let's say some skin cells to become heart cells, well, I can't even use those to then treat my nerve tissue. I can really only use them to treat one thing. Um, so when I say expensive, we're talking $100,000 or more to treat one person, and then really have no chance of treating another person. So for some people that's an option, but for many people it's just not. It's too expensive, for them to use. Stem cell technologies aren't just necessarily, or they don't just necessarily show potential to be used to treat wounds. There are a couple of other potential uses for them, and two of those ways that we could use stem cell technology is one is lab grown meat. So this is instead of growing an entire cow just to make, a few cuts of steak, you just grow a steak in a petri dish. We have done this. The scientists who have tasted this petri dish grown meat say that the taste is there, but the texture is still a little bit off because this is basically just a whole bunch of muscle cells without any of the fat or sinew or tendons or blood vessels that kind of make up the texture of meat. Uh, so if we were able to do this and make sort of a marketable piece of meat, the amount of energy and space and time and resources that would go into actually growing a piece of meat would be far, far less, which would really drastically reduce both the cost of meat and its environmental impact. The other sort of technology that's related to stem cells but isn't actually using stem cells themselves is reproductive cloning. So this is taking the DNA from one organism and making an identical genetic copy to that organism. So some of the techniques used in stem cell research could also be used to clone a person. And that is something that is sort of a whole nother rabbit hole of controversy that we're not going to get into. Um, but that the potential is there. Just very briefly, I want to touch on our current stem cell policy. Uh, in 2019, President Trump basically reversed an Obama era policy banning government scientists um, from using any type of fetal tissue in their research, including stem cell research. Uh, and there are now further restrictions on non-government scientists using fetal tissue in their research. So these types of technologies have been greatly restricted in the U.S., but they haven't been restricted everywhere. And there are some other countries, the United Kingdom and Taiwan in particular, are could make the argument a decade or more ahead of where the U.S. is on stem cell research. Um, so some of our scientists are leaving, and some of the people who need treatment for these medical conditions that stem cells can treat are choosing to go and get treated somewhere else. So there is this balance that we have to decide on between our technological advancement, our ability to help people who are sick or injured, and the controversy of destroying fertilized embryos. That's something that we need to decide as as a people and as a country. Right now, the policy in the U.S. is that people can donate their fertilized embryos sort of after they've you know hopefully successfully become pregnant through in vitro fertilization, but that they cannot receive any sort of financial compensation for the embryos themselves or any treatment that is derived from them. And that's really to avoid any people creating fertilized embryos just for the sake of profiting off of them. So that's where we stand today, and we're going to spend uh, really the rest of this week, this entire week, um, just talking about stem cells and their use in the U.S. and where we do fall sort of on a personal level in that spectrum of how and when we should use stem cells and at what point it becomes acceptable or not to destroy a human embryo.